We know from past experience that the most effective tool for keeping kids safe is armed law enforcement on the campus.
That was Texas Senator Ted Cruz spouting the same BS talking points following the mass shooting that happened on a school campus in Uvalde, Texas. That mass shooting claimed the lives of 19 elementary students and 2 teachers. The shooting happened in a 4th grade classroom. We're talking about 9 and 10-year-olds being gunned down in cold blood. But you should also know that the statement that Ted Cruz made is easily debunked, especially in this context, because the school had an armed resource officer. Apparently the resource officer confronted the gunman. These details are unclear and subject to change, which is why I kind of don't want to get into it until we have confirmation. We know for sure there was an armed resource officer on campus. He engaged with the gunman, although reports indicate that no shots were fired between the two. And the gunman proceeded to shoot and kill 19 students, 19 elementary kids, and 2 teachers. You should also know that there were literally cops there on the scene even before he ran into the school and barricaded himself. And I think it's important to understand that. So let me give you all the details that we know as of now. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said the 18-year-old gunman first shot his grandmother in the face before going into Robb Elementary School and killing 19 children and 2 teachers. She called the police and the gunman fled, had an accident with a vehicle outside the school, and then went into the school. But when he went into the school, there were already cops there. By the way, miraculously, his grandmother survived. She got shot in the face, and she is currently in critical condition. I really hope she survives. But 21 people did not survive. So there were cops there. And so let's have a better understanding of how this timeline went. CNN caught up with Texas Safety Lieutenant Chris Olivares, and he gave them a timeline, and it'll make it abundantly clear that there were armed cops there, and the gunman was in the classroom for over an hour before anyone barged in to do something about it. Let's watch.
There's a lot of questions about the timeline here.
Right.
It starts with the grandmother at the home. What happens there?
Right, so the initial incident was a domestic disturbance involving the shooter with his grandmother, in which the shooter actually shot his own grandmother. From that point, he fled the scene in a vehicle. There was reports that the vehicle crashed nearby the school and that they saw an individual armed with a weapon going inside the school.
Who's they?
Local law enforcement. They received a call. They received the call that the vehicle crashed, that there was an individual with a long rifle making his way into the school. And that's when local law enforcement responded on scene.
Local law enforcement engaged with him before he entered the school?
Right, so we had local law enforcement from Uvalde Police Department, one of the school police officers, as well as state troopers that arrived on scene. They were the initial officers on scene. They heard the gunfire. They were met with gunfire as they encountered this gunman who was able to shoot 2 police officers. Non-life-threatening injuries. They are stable. They are out of the hospital. But at that point, they were at a disadvantage because the gunman was able to make entry into a classroom, barricaded himself inside that classroom.
So did Ted Cruz even bother to learn the details of the shooting? Or did he have his prepared talking points, regardless of what happened in the shooting, to offer any other solution other than doing something about guns? No, he didn't bother. Why would he bother? Why would he bother? And by the way, Ted Cruz, much like the way he dresses and the way he talks, can be bought real cheap, okay? Let's take a look at graphic 3 here. Jordan Uhl doing God's work. I don't believe in God, but if there was one, he's doing his work. How much money has Ted Cruz received from the NRA? Just $176,274. That's it, that's all it took. That's all it took. But I would be curious to see whether he's invested in Smith and Wesson or Ruger or any of these other gun manufacturers that are publicly traded. Because if he knows that the value of the stock will go up after a mass shooting. Why would he want to do anything about mass shootings? He's making money. He's got his prepared talking points. All we needed was armed teachers, a resource officer. All we needed was more armed people in the school or near the school, more good people with guns to protect the students, right? Let's hear more from the public safety official in Texas.
Interacts with the police, shoots 2 of the police, non-fatal injuries,
Right.
goes into the school, barricades himself in a classroom, you say.
Right.
What more details can you give me about that moment inside, which I presume is the first classroom he went into?
Right, so of course, the initial group of officers that were on scene, at that point, they were at a point of disadvantage because the shooter was able to barricade himself inside that classroom. There was not sufficient manpower at that time. And their primary focus was to preserve any further loss of life. So they started breaking windows around the school and trying to rescue and evacuate children and teachers while that was going on. At that point, we had a specialized tactical team arrive comprised of federal officers, local police officers as well. They made forcible entry into that classroom. One of those officers was met with gunfire. He was shot, non-life-threatening injury. And at that point, they were able to shoot and kill the shooter.
Let me reiterate, that's now the second video confirming that there were cops on the scene. There were cops on the scene and they did nothing. At first we thought they did nothing for about 30 minutes, but it turns out they did nothing for around an hour. Around an hour. Can you guys imagine? Just imagine for a second, okay? Being trained law enforcement and you hear the gunman in an elementary school gunning down elementary students, and you're like, we're waiting for backup. We're waiting for backup, but all we need is the good guys with the gun. We need the good guys with the gun, right, Ted Cruz? They hadn't even identified the bodies yet, and Ted Cruz is already spouting this BS talking point. One more video, let's watch.
The tactical team that came, where did they come from and how long did it take for them to make entry?
It was a local team. Some of those were actually off-duty Border Patrol agents as well. It's a comprised team of federal agents, local law enforcement. They all responded to the scene. They were able to make forcible entry. As far as timeline, the response, I do not have that information right now, but they reacted in a moment's notice.
Right, because it just seems that he was in there for so long in that classroom and that the officers who were initially on scene.
Yeah, the cops were there for quite a long time before they did anything about it. So it turns out, I guess it's inconvenient, which is why Ted Cruz didn't mention it, but there were plenty of good guys with guns, plenty of armed people there. And turns out that didn't stop a mass shooter from murdering 19 kids and 2 teachers. But they'll spout these talking points anyway, because they wouldn't dare cross the NRA. They wouldn't dare go against their own financial interests. Because in America, the land of death, not the land of opportunity, not the land of liberty and freedom, the land of death, profits over people. We see it in our healthcare system. We see it in the way that we treat our planet. We see it in the way we treat our kids. We see it everywhere. Texas certainly sees it with how they treated their energy grid, deregulated it, allowing private utility companies to cut corners and allow Texans to literally freeze to death during winter storms. We're the land of death. Does anyone deny it? Are we really gonna pretend like we're better than every other country? We're the greatest country in the world? No, we're not. The idea of America is pretty great. We certainly don't live up to it. And every year we move further and further away from it.